But yeah, I guess tell us a little bit about you, your background. Because you didn't grow up.
Are we starting now?
Yep.
Sorry. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, like you didn't grow up in the oil and gas, right? That was not where
No.
you come from. Your first generation oil and gas. Yeah. So how
Yeah.
like kind of what's your background? Where'd you grow up?
Yeah. So my background, Colorado. I was born in Michigan, but moved out here when I was 3 or 4 years old, and going to school here. Went to college up in Greeley. Right. I went to
Okay.
school in Greeley, but that's the heart of the oil and gas universe for Colorado. But back then it wasn't. It was a bunch of poor old dirt farmers in a dying farming town, more or less. Well, I went to school there, college there, loved it, and from there went to work at IBM in Boulder.
Oh, no
Was
kidding.
my first job, right? So we called it the Prairie Prison. Sorry, IBM, but it was a total, sit in front of your desk all day and take phone call job. Hated every minute of
Yeah.
it, and for my sanity, I would take lunch breaks or breaks and go out and drive around, Boulder County and Weld County, just kicking down some dirt roads and back roads and whatever. And I would see all these roustabouts and rig hands and drill rigs, all these workers out in the field. And this back in like 2002, 2003.
Dang.
This is back when energy independence. Obama was he was kind of the big advocate for energy independence, and then the advent of horizontal drilling kind of brought that reality home. And under the Obama administration, we became quote unquote towards energy independent, but a real powerhouse.
Yeah. Big time.
And so
The revolution.
for me, that the issue to solve in business at that time in history was, how do we solve this energy crisis that we have? We need energy. We need oil and gas. Here's this new technology, horizontal drilling and fracking, that could unlock this. It's been perfected, and so that was really ramping up, right? So.
And you kind of seen that as your
Yeah, it's like I want to do something. I would have loved to have been out there as a rig hand doing something. I mean, I wanted to do something with my hands. I wanted to be a part of solving this problem.
Yep.
And so for me, I got into it. I got into it by way of staffing. I had a buddy that owned a staffing company.
Okay.
And they staffed engineers and designers and drafters and PMs and executives in the oil and gas, mining, and power generation space.
Dang.
And I gravitated right towards oil and gas. Always had. That was back in 2006.
Yeah.
And from there, it was kind of an ideal way to start in an industry, because all I did all day, every day, was network with people. I took them to lunch with no real agenda other than like, hey, tell me what you do. I didn't know really, all things on the table. I didn't know the difference between a drafter, a designer, an engineer.
Which is kind of good though. 'Cause
Yeah,
you
it was
have no
awesome. I
bias,
mean,
you're just a kind of a sponge of
people getting into it, their biggest asset is being dumb. Just people want to help.
Yeah,
people naturally.
that's one thing I've seen in this industry. It's just if you got some effort and
Totally.
good head on your shoulders, and you're willing to learn, like people are going to take you under your wing.
They're under their wing. They want to tell their story.
Yeah.
Our industry doesn't really put a good narrative out there, systemically. But you talk to an individual that's been in it for a while, you'll soon realize these people are stewards of the land. They want to do good by the community.
Yep.
They want to help solve the energy problem. That's what we're at.
And I
at
always
the
say
end of
that
the
is like we're your neighbors. Like we have families.
Yeah.
We breathe the same air and drink the same water. We want the same kind of goals. Could always be better, yes. And are we getting better? Yes. And we'll continue to get better and be really responsible for what we're doing.
Right.
But also take action and make it happen. Because
Yep.
we can talk. You can talk all about energy and other sources, but this industry is getting it done every day.
Absolutely. And so when I got into that in 2006, did that for about 5 years, and then one of the clients that I recruited for was an engineering company. They had brought me on to do more. I have a business background and marketing background, and so they had brought me on to do operations management, to basically set up an office in Midland, to set up an office in the Four Corners of Colorado area, and basically staff engineers, find the work, and build the offices and the infrastructure.
grinding.
So that was more up my alley anyway.
Yeah.
I wanted more than just this kind of siloed channel of just staffing people. I'm like, man, I'm finding all these people for businesses. If I were to build the business, I got the people. I just need to find the work, and I'm doing all that. Absolutely loved it. But a few years into that, I realized hey, I'm a business guy, and all these engineering companies and a lot of these oil field companies, they're run by engineers, which are, kind of just by default, they're not great business people. And no offense to any engineers out there. It's just there's a different methodology of thinking. An entrepreneur is, you know, not very risk adverse. They'll go with their gut a lot. They'll
Well, you got a vision, right? You can see it. Like that's what
you've got a vision that no one else sees.
Yeah.
And I got, you know,
and it's so clear that it's painful.
yeah. So I did that for a few years. And when I started my own thing and came on and helped build Summit, it was, you know, I was like, this guy doesn't know what he's doing, you know, and that was fueling my tank. I loved that because
when did you start Summit then?
Summit was 2015.
2015.
2015. Then we sold it in 2020 to Sergeant Lundy, which was
That's
where I'm
crazy.
at now. But, you know, 5 years is a quick ramp. So we started that in 2015, which was a downturn year.
Mm-hmm.
And how did we overcome that? It was lonely nights on the road for weeks at a time, man. Sitting, driving a Jeep Grand Cherokee and an F-150, basically between North Dakota and Texas, week after week after week, stopping every plant, field office, corporate office I could find to drop off hats and flyers and business cards. I mean, it was truly like a 19, you know, when you think of like a 1950s or 60s salesman selling trinkets out of the truck, that's what I was doing.
Selling vacuum cleaners.
And I found these, you know, everybody was busy in the Bakken and everybody was busy in the DJ. And I was like, man, our entry level is going to be these secondary and tertiary basins, places like the San Juan Basin and the Piceance that, you know, they're busy enough and they'll keep some people busy, but people are really focused on these other.
And nobody's coming out there.
No big sexy programs or anything like that, but enough work to sustain a couple dozen people when you put everything together. So we did that. Of course, we're in the Permian, started dinking around in the Haynesville and the Eagleford, and then the Powder River Basin was a big one for me. It's Wyoming. It's a oil and gas friendly area, close to Colorado, very similar climate, and within striking distance, we could use our office up there. So we did that, and it was a vision that, you know, of course everybody wanted us in the Bakken and big time in the Permian, but that stuff came with time.
Yeah,
so basically
focus on your
mortgaged my house, started up Summit. Had a couple other business partners that kind of had that business rolling, and then it was a total evolution of a couple of 1099 contractors that we then built a nucleus around, got full benefit package, got them on. I mean, I did it all, man. Figured out the timekeeping system, the benefits. I was HR, I was sales, I was ops, I was staffing. It was everything, and it was a blessing and a curse.
Yeah.
But when you look at that 5-year ramp, it was, you know, probably 15 years worth of work put into 5 years. When I think of the time, I worked 7 days a week, and I know people say that a lot. I lost a marriage over it. I lost a lot of stuff.
Well, and you don't realize time. Like you got no choice.
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost like, you know, you don't have any kids, right?
No.
But so that's the only thing I can relate to. You know, business is once it's born, you want it to be a good, you know,
a great analogy.
A great business, a good steward. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you're trying to grow this baby or this child, and it's in a toddler, and then it's, you know, now it's fully grown, and you don't ever. Yeah, you're going through ups and downs, and you don't want it to die. So you're hanging on and doing everything, and it's like you didn't even know you had that in you. You know what I mean? So in some moments, I'm like, holy shit! A lot of the stuff we had to learn that we didn't even know.
Yeah,
you know,
there's no manual for it, and you do learn everything the hard way.
And it's test your will. It's like if you can, you know, if you can stay in this, man, it's there's a reason why only a small percentage actually are successful. It's incredible.
There's a lot of luck. A lot of people helped me going up, so of course got to give them props. But it was truly, there's no manual for it. Pain is a powerful teacher.
Yeah.
So when I would mess up, it was my own money and my own time, which was even worse. You know, weeks and weeks, and I would do one thing wrong or bid a project wrong and lose it. And it was just, I don't want to call it a waste of time, but it wasn't fruitful.
Yeah, but you got to fail quickly. Like you got to keep. It's like fail.
Yeah, when you're burning through your own money, you know, I was bringing in. I remember, you know, when we started up Summit, we started to build payroll. Well, there's always this lag with cash flow. If you don't, you can live on cash flow, but if you don't have enough cash flow to sustain, or if somebody has a blip in payment, it sucks. I remember like the third or fourth payroll cycle that after we kind of got this thing up and running, I had to bring in $160,000 of my own money to bring in payroll, and that funded like 2 weeks.
Yes,
you know, and so knowing imagine putting a $160,000 bet on the line, and then I knew that I had to go out there and go win. Our net profit percentage was between 7 and 10% on any given project.
Jesus.
So in my head, I'm thinking, okay, I got to go find $2 million worth of work just to pay myself back for this one cycle. It was crazy, and that included some business
That
expenses
was
and payroll.
that was in the beginning.
That was in the very beginning.
Yeah.
I was freaking out, man. I mean, I had my my head, my hands, wondering what the heck did I just do?
Yeah.
And there was a lot of those times.
I bet you it felt good when it was you did kind of get to the 5 year and
Yeah, it was about the
you
3 year mark when it turned the corner. So it
Yeah.
was right at literally like almost on the dot, right? And I had written a business plan that was a 5 year plan to build it to 20 million in revenue and sell. I mean, that was our goal. Well, you know, so we just had some sort of game plan.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
right at 3 years, I mean, almost to the day, that thing turned, and then we started to be profitable. We were able to get in, you know, take that money, invest it in great business, like office space,
Yep.
fleet vehicles. Then we became, you know, then could really put ourselves on the map, right? We were legitimate. We had
Starting to build a culture.
yeah, we didn't have some rinky-dink office, which isn't terribly important to some people, but a lot, you know, if you're going to try and get a professional or a group of professionals to come work and clients to come in and you know, meet with your people, they want to see that you're bona fide, right? So
Yeah.
we built the office space. Then we had fleet trucks with our logos on it, and that was like a marketing effort, right? When people would see you on site, they're like, okay, they're out there.
No,
So
and you've always been very aware of the marketing. Like,
Yeah.
I kind of
LinkedIn. When I started doing LinkedIn posts, as a good segue, LinkedIn is what really
it's incredible.
there's a driver of most
Yeah.
of my success. And I would get on airplanes and, oh yeah, you're the guy I see on LinkedIn all the time, and they know who I was. And then I had no idea who they were, and I'd go look them up on LinkedIn. And sure as enough,
Yeah.
they had zero activity. Here's a free tool, more or less,
Oh, it was
where
incredible.
you can put your name out there and market. And that's really the only place that this industry can get any sort of foothold to showcase what we're doing, both in people and projects. That we talked about it as we got started. The oil and gas industry, unbelievable the amount of evolution and good that you know we've deployed the latest in technology and standards. It's not even on the same not in the same galaxy as where it was even 10 years ago.
Or anything, but
No.
it's the reality, it's the facts. It's you know, I think we've been too humble for too long. It's nice to be humble, but you still got to be bold and you know, get that narrative back, because everything is here. That it's incredible. The technology, innovation, people, camaraderie, culture.
100%.
It's amazing.
It's like such a great incubator of entrepreneurial spirit and innovation for sure. And that's where I came in as a business guy looking at this engineering world. I think a lot of engineers are just looking at this like, all right, I'm, you know, nothing terribly sexy about a well pad or a compressor station. But for me, I had a natural curiosity. Like when I would put the gas nozzle in my gas tank, I would think, where did this stuff come from?
Yeah.
And so to actually see the equipment and the facilities and the infrastructure and the design and the human minds that went into this stuff.
That's where the story is. Like, and
That's where the story is.
I agree.
You've got the story. You know, you hear the stuff like trust the science, all this stuff. Okay, well, if you're going to trust the science, the stuff that we design and build today in the United States and in Canada and pretty much North America, when it comes to oil and gas infrastructure, is designed by the best minds in science and technology.
Yeah.
You've got engineers and scientists figuring all this stuff out, doing it safe. Then you've got all this technology through drilling and instrumentation and leak detection.
Well, I almost like compared to like NASA, they're just going up, we're going down.
Totally.
But
That's a
it's
great
like
analogy.
Same pressures, same like extreme temperatures. I mean, the stuff that the people had to figure out to extract that from Earth and bring it, and then now, you know, break it up into 27 different, you know, chemicals or materials to make stuff from that. It's
Yeah.
like,
I mean, when you tell that story, it's incredible. And if you were to get into schools and trade shows and actually tell that story, it's great. The problem is the industry as a whole just has a really hard time doing that. And I don't know why that is.
Well, it gets back to that kind of the LinkedIn, because I remember in the early days, you were a big proponent of just like, you know, this is a great tool. Like, people are crazy not to be using it. And so you did it early on. We started doing it early on, and like now, I mean, we probably do 90% of our business just on LinkedIn. Just, you know, built up a pretty focused, you know, network that people I think trust, and then so that we can bring a lot of this stuff together. It's called
and for anybody that listens or watches this, it's the company that we ended up selling our business in 2020. And the reason we sold to Sargent Lundy, we had a few people sniffing around, 5 or 6 companies that were trying. We wanted a cultural fit for our employees. We wanted something that we weren't just this adder to their company. We wanted a bolt-on value add, man. We wanted to we wanted to have some sort of strategic foothold where they didn't have offices and they didn't do oil and gas, so we were going to bring that expertise, and that was the perfect fit.
Yeah, it
Plus, my
wasn't.
whole
It
family's from
wasn't.
Chicago. There was a
Yeah,
lot of things that
but it wasn't a short-term goal. It wasn't like, hey,
no,
we're
we were
just.
under contract 15 months, and they found us by LinkedIn, and they loved particularly my LinkedIn presence. And that's not boastful. I'm just saying if you're going to go market yourself to somebody, everybody's looking at it. I got called all sorts of stupid names and social media nut, blah blah blah. Everything you could think of, people would snicker at it and this and that. I just kept on. I
Well,
knew that
you're building your avatar,
building a
on-
brand.
Yeah,
It
but
was
it's
building a
like
brand.
I think people get nervous because like, oh, okay, they want to come across kind of goofy or whatever. But really, the network and your connections and who you are, if you can relay that on LinkedIn, it's incredible how far that reaches.
Yeah, and my advice there is to find your point of your source of pride. Like mine was all I was really proud of what I was doing. Every time I hired somebody, I was footing the bill for their payroll, and I found them, I hired them, I convinced them, one way or another, to trust me to
Yeah.
come abandon their job that they had that was a lot of times safe. They were working for CH2M Hill or Jacobs, big companies, come for work for little old Summit Engineering. And they had families, and so there's all this pressure that got put on me. Like I've got to find enough work for this person to make sure that they can feed their families, they can take their vacations, that if they get hurt or they get sick, that they have benefits. I mean, the amount of pressure that comes with it was astronomical. But I was proud every time I hired somebody, so I would post it. And when we would design something that got built by a Chevron or a DCP or even a little operator, a little Anschutz or something, I was so proud of that
Yeah,
that
because there's
I wanted to show
a
it off, man.
successful story behind it.
It's
Yeah,
like, showing go back to family. Your kid won T-ball. I mean,
Yeah,
that was my kid,
yeah.
And so for me, it was just a real source of pride. It was very genuine. Nothing. I didn't mean to be boastful, but something in there resonated with a lot of people, and I got a lot of traction on LinkedIn. LinkedIn posts you'd get like
Well,
10 or 15.
and I think it does come from pride and empathy of what you're doing, right? Because I think a lot of even what we do with Social Octane, I think comes from empathy of having the experience in the industry from the field. Like I know how tough it is and how much I've sacrificed, and then to see kind of the backlash and all this negative stuff that it's just a lot of it's not very true. But that's just controlled from another narrative, right? That was the big, I think, goal is, you're so proud of this industry that it was just missing some creativity and kind of making it cool and a little bit hipper, right? But that comes through the stories. I mean,
Totally.
the technology, some of it's really cool, but a lot of it's pretty, it's getting out with hammers and wrenches.
Which is also cool.
Yeah, it's also cool because the stories behind each one of those workers, that's where all the gold is. I think the biggest challenge has always been just connecting people to the product through the people.
Yeah.
So
Those trade craft labor will not be replaced by AI.
No.
It's just swinging a hammer.
That's going to be the last one standing.
I've always grabbed, even though I'm run an engineering company, I'm a business. I want to be out in the field. I go out there and see men and women welding and swinging a hammer and changing out equipment, doing maintenance.
Yep.
In the middle of you go down to Midland, it's hotter than blue blazes. You got wind blowing, and then the opposite in North Dakota, Canada. These people are working in the most adverse conditions. A lot of our people worked in Fort McMurray, where the warm-up room was 32 degrees, right? Everything else like 20 below. Yeah, I mean, and they're happily doing it, and it's just wild that that story, that message that I carried on LinkedIn. I would love to see more of it. You guys do a great job of it.
Yeah,
it goes to
we've
like
talked about it before, and I'm trying to get it going hopefully next year's Boots to Suits, where just being in the field, but get out there, get in there.
Love it.
I mean, it's like Mike Rowe starts, get on a rig, get back on a wireline truck, and then you kind of got Madison where she's absorbing it all, but she's never been in the field, but she gets asked the questions that a lot of people probably don't get asked, or I wouldn't ask, and then go to the C-suite level and talk about business and culture. So, but yeah, just to see that, like the elements of what's going on, it's a lot. It's incredibly difficult.
We're not in the oil and gas business. We're in the quality of life business, right? So when you see people railing against oil and gas, a lot of the people I've seen at testimony at the state level, at the federal level, at the local level, everyone that rails against it, even our most vocal opponents, use our products every day.
Yeah.
Why? Because they're life enhancing. That's the message. It's not. I absolutely hate when I see companies buying into climate change and this and that. Aside from whatever that is, our point And the model that we should be focused on is that if we took the model that we had in North America and exported that globally, that would drive down your emissions. If that's what you really cared about, driving down emissions, go take the way that we design and build infrastructure here, the safety, the emissions capture, all the technology, and deploy that worldwide. The advent of natural gas development in North America, and especially the United States, did more to reduce our emissions than anything else that we've done. That's electrification, anything else. Switching from coal to natural gas was the biggest driver of downcycling
such an
emissions.
abundance of it.
That's one thing, and where I look at how we operate, and I think I have a different purview than a lot of people, and a lot of these operators should be telling this story, but the best thing you could do is buy local, like buying your eggs or your fruit or anything else.
Yeah.
And if we can, like a lot of times we'll design infrastructure here in Greeley or Weld County, put it into a pipeline network in Colorado, and it goes to a gas utility in Colorado. And we've designed the whole thing from soup to nuts.
That's
Comes out of the
incredible.
ground, cleans it up, processes it, and pushes it to an end user to use in their fireplace to stay warm in Aspen or in Telluride, wherever you want to put it, so that they can live a healthy, safe, and comfortable life in a climate that would otherwise kill them.
Yeah.
And so that's my view of it. And I've spent a lot of time hiking. I grew up in Colorado. I spent so many weekends and weeks camping and hiking and roughing it. And roughing it is sleeping in a nice sleeping bag made of petrochemicals and a tent made of petrochemicals, fishing and doing all that fun stuff. That ain't even really roughing it, man.
No.
That's still using a lot of creature
What
comforts.
a lot of, I think, in this industry, everybody are outdoors people. I mean, they love the outdoors, the environment, right? So, it's just that perspective of knowing what makes it all and truly knowing that, being proud of it and getting that out there. I think that's come a long ways too. People really dialing in and taking some pride on actually what they're doing.
Yeah.
They're just not doing a job. They're creating a lot of I guess driving the modern world in a lot of senses of products. So,
It is.
Yeah. We kind of speak, I guess, a little segue to the Energy Strong days, because I think this all kind of flows into that and how that kind of got kickstarted, because that one seemed like it started from a hashtag and it went to a full-blown, ground.
Yeah.
Boots
We're
on the
working
ground.
on revamping some of the logos and merchandise. But yeah, Energy Strong was something that was grassroots. It was Colorado
totally.
based, because after Proposition 112, which is the first kind of salvo against oil and gas in our state. So what happened, for anybody that's not familiar, is that there was a ballot initiative to restrict oil and gas drilling in Colorado. That was called Proposition 112. The voters rejected that by like a 12% margin. So that was a good win.
Yeah.
So here we were celebrating. I remember watching
I
the election
know.
results like it was a Super Bowl,
Dude,
right?
it was incredible.
And I was in there with Energy Strong. That's kind of where we got started. So we were advocating, we were educating people on, hey, this is how we really do it. Like, here's what fracking is. Here's how we drill.
Yeah, you're going to the Capitol. You're going.
I was going to the Capitol. I was going into barbershops and places that would never get exposure to oil and gas. Trying to get into schools and going to any career fair I could get into and tell them, here's what we really do, and here's why we want to. Here's why it's in our best interest to continue oil and gas drilling and production in our state. Not necessarily my job or your job or anybody else's job. It's to keep commodity prices low so people could have a good quality of life.
Yeah.
I was on the other side of that. Like I said, back to 2006 when I started, gas was $4 or $5 a gallon, and back then, it'd be like 8 or 9 today.
Yeah.
And natural gas, we were running out of it. People were freaking out. It was a real crisis. So, and then we were depending on all these foreign regimes, which at any given cycle were either friends with us or they weren't.
Yeah,
Totally.
totally.
If they decided they didn't like us, they just shut stuff off or reduce drilling. And so you have this real volatile industry. And so I was getting in anywhere I could. Like I said, barbershops, anybody I could talk to at Home Depot or whatever. We created this Energy Strong logo with a hat that said Energy Strong. That became a talking point. I would go into the grocery store. I would go in anywhere. People would say, what is that? So
I remember you guys did that campaign on the tipping, right?
Yeah. We did tip the bill. So if you went out somewhere and it was $20, you tipped $20, and we had little stickers you put on your tab that said bought by oil and gas. It showed the impact of this industry goes far beyond, a drill rig. It goes into people that build stuff, the accountants, the HR people.
Just downtown Denver with restaurants and
everything.
entertainment.
That was it. Like, here's the impact. Oil and gas people tend to, you know, take care of their clients, and they take them to a lot of lunches and baseball games, stuff like that. That was a big thing. So that was a big, that was a pretty big social media campaign. But then, so as that was the first salvo, 112. Then after we won that, the voters rejected that kind of restriction of oil and gas development. Right on the tails of that,
They snuck in.
legislature, they didn't really sneak it in, but they just jammed through.
Yeah, jammed through,
this
yeah,
whole. There was plenty of time to give testimony for or against oil and gas, and what we found was down at the state capitol, we assembled. There was really nothing in this state that we could find that told the oil and gas story. And still to this day, even we don't do a great job at it. I think we're better than most, but Koga, none of those things were really tailored towards helping the average neighbor or friend or person that wasn't in oil and gas understand it. And further, there's no mechanism to motivate and deploy these people out to testimony sites where these were the decisions were being made. So what happened on the tails of 112 was Senate Bill 181, which basically gave local control to each county and city to regulate oil and gas as they saw fit. What happened? If you're anti-oil and gas, there was all these, if those areas were anti-oil and gas, there was moratoriums, and people were taking mineral rights away from people and all that. And it was this big patchwork and setbacks and all this. And so we deployed down to the Capitol. I can't even tell you how many times we went to town hall meetings. This is stuff I did not want to do. I want to be focused on my business, figuring out how to make it successful and do better. Instead, I'm down at the state Capitol. I'm out at Commerce City town hall meetings. I'm up in Erie. I'm in Boulder. Tip of the spear, taking all sorts of heat. All I was doing, I would take 2 or 3 engineers, and we would, if we went to Boulder, we'd take 2 or 3 engineers that graduated from CU Boulder. Say, look, you guys are the narrative here is that these things are unsafe and this and that. Here's 2 or 3 process engineers to tell you the layers of safety that we incorporate into every design that we do in North America,
and they continue to get better.
It's the best in the world and getting better. And that was somewhat effective. We would have people engage with us that were antis that would come up and say, can we come into your office and talk to your engineers? Sometimes we would agree to that. Sometimes we would say no, but we'll publish some data. So Energy Strong, then we started publishing one sheets on emissions reduction and safety and this and that. Moderately effective. What we found though was we would go to these town hall meetings or down to the Capitol, and we were always outnumbered. In fact, we went down to Arapahoe County, was trying to do a moratorium on drilling, which is right south of here.
Yeah.
There's some drilling going on the east side of Arapahoe County. And there was a hearing, right? And so anybody could show up. And so we got Energy Strong. We got about 8 people to show up from putting posts out. And there's maybe 20 people, 30 people for oil and gas, and there's about 80 against.
Jeez.
And so what happens? I mean, these elected officials have to listen to their constituency. So even though we went in there and we gave our story, we're outnumbered 2 or 3 to 1. You got to get some pretty compelling data to win that argument. Which that one was a victory. We ended up swaying one city council member, and the moratorium was shelved. Right, but it was still contentious, and it's still a fight every day.
Yeah. So where do you from there till now? What are you seeing? Kind of how is that? I guess shaped Colorado now, and what are the challenges kind of going forward, and how do we, from what your lessons, how do we kind of tackle this?
Great question, because do a lot of work in Texas, North Dakota, Wyoming. They think we're a bunch of weirdos, which I can't argue with them. When I look at the state and how we're governed and how
we look like aliens. Yeah.
Well, kind of. It's become a little bit of a strategic advantage because the way that we design stuff in Colorado is so stringent in terms of adhering to air quality.
But it's kind of giving an advantage of
because I think everybody's kind of like the public perception now is that, hey, if the technology's there and they can do it this way, then the operators in Texas and Wyoming and Kansas, wherever, out in the middle of nowhere, should probably do this.
Coming from Canada, when I got down here, we were like 10 years ahead of a lot of the environmental and safety. It's because they were so on them up there. So I feel like Colorado's kind of turned into the leader.
Canada of the United States.
Yeah.
I mean, it's valid. And I think a lot of that, look, if it exists, let's do it the right way. Totally agree with it. The thing is, now you've seen in Colorado this big push towards air quality and safety and this and that, all for it. And where I see it going is, Colorado, that was the first domino, and we've kind of learned more or less to operate. There's been a ton of consolidation, whether it's by design or not, who's to say? But now it's just, Colorado used to be an incubator of startups. There was all
Totally.
sorts of wildcatters and small operating and midstream companies. Now producing and midstream companies. Now it's
They shift
a handful
right
of really big ones that chomped them all up that can, deal with the regulatory framework that it's there. So depending on what you want, it's good or bad. I'm fairly agnostic on it. I think as long as we're able to drill, although drilling's down about 25% over where it was prior to all the
It's definitely
regulation.
a different landscape.
Totally different
you
landscape.
come downtown now, it's like, wow, that really stomped out a lot of energy.
It did. The amount of hustle and bustle and networking and all that going on. It's hard to get people to even come to a happy hour or a dinner anymore.
Yeah, where it used to be, if you just went out on the street,
plant a flag,
as
man.
long as as long as you're downtown, you'd run into somebody.
Yeah. A lot of the people in downtown have decentralized. It's still the work from home thing. We are seeing, a rebound. I mean, oil's at $87, $88, and people have kind of found a way through it for the most part. But in Colorado, what's happened here and in Canada, I think there's no question. It's just a matter of time before before that's nationwide. That's just a mandate of some kind. And luckily we've kind of taken all those arrows and learned the hard way and figured out a lot of things to where we could easily take the designs, take the technology that we have, and say, we already figured that out. Here you go.
Yeah, and I think getting back to telling the story of the journey, like, because then people will relate in that area. Control that narrative, or at least have a narrative.
Yeah, Texans are interesting. I mean, so they always think it's Texas. This is Texas, and no one's ever gonna come mess with us. And I understand that mindset. I spent a lot of time in Midland, and I certainly appreciate it. The issue is it's coming. I mean, you can only delay so much. So stand up for your industry and tell the story. Tell your neighbors what you do. Get on LinkedIn, and in a good way. You don't have to fight with people. You're not going to convince somebody by screaming and calling them an idiot. Just tell them what you do and how you do it, and plant some safety metrics there. We have the data on our side.
Yeah, everything is there. It's almost like people need to be kind of educated more on how to talk about the industry.
That's right.
Without getting heated.
Yeah.
Or being open to have an empathy from the other side too. I think with Texas in particular, just a lot of influx of people that are not from Texas, that it's just going to start changing. This Colorado.
That was Colorado 10 years ago.
Colorado, 100%.
And you got to embrace it. You got to figure that out. But yeah, it's social media has become an easy place to just offload and throw in a grenade of a comment and leave. And LinkedIn's a little better because you're not anonymous and you've got your job history on there and all that. So you got to kind of, and the thing I like about LinkedIn is if you put some data in there that's wrong, somebody will come along and fix it.
100%.
And I like that because I've been guilty of that too. I'll put one thing like, someone's like, dude, your math's off, which, okay, it's always off. So thanks for fixing it. Now I know going forward. So I really like that. But tell your story. Don't be afraid to tell your story. Be proud of what you do. And don't stick your head in the sand and think that going to work every day. I get the mindset of, I just want to go to work and be left alone. That's very common in our industry. You go work 50 hours a week. The last thing you want to do.
Any industry too. Sometimes it just becomes a job, right? Now, I think people are starting to, like we talked before, just really take some pride in it. And it's like, wow, this is more than just a job here.
I mean, when you look at most of what people chatter about when they talk about the attacks on oil and gas, they say what? Jobs and taxes. We provide a lot of tax revenue and we provide a lot of jobs. But no one outside of the industry really cares about that stuff. And we need to understand that. It's no different than the actors that are on strike in LA. I don't really care about that. I mean, good luck to them if they want to go fight for something. But it's the same thing. And right now, real estate's, I've got a lot of friends who are real estate agents, mortgage people. I feel for them, but there's not a whole lot that I'm not going to go to a real estate or an Airbnb meeting and say, go to a public hearing and go advocate for them. We have to advocate for ourselves or we accept our fate. And I mean, that's ultimately where it ends up. So I really, anybody listening, watching, it feels good to stand up and do those things. It's very intimidating to go in front of a room of people that don't like you by default, that have a preconceived notion of what you are and what you do.
It gives me anxiety just thinking about it.
It does, man. It does me too. Even though I've done it 100 times, I go in there, I'm like, oh man, here we go. And then once you get up there, it's powerful, man. You start talking and you tell your story, and I don't say anything that's not true. I just tell them what we do. And the story's a good one. And that all of them used oil and gas to get here, to sit inside of this building that's heated with natural gas, that's freezing outside, and we'd all be dead without this existential product.
Yeah, it's backed by actual facts or stuff that you
It's
can touch.
facts.
Yeah.
It's facts, and so that's where we have to lie. That's where we have to be is factual, very pragmatic driven, unemotional.
And I think too, there's a shift in generation now. There's a lot of I call it the ultimate crew change, where COVID kind of sped that up, but a lot of great minds have now either retired or they're getting close,
Huge gap.
and there's a huge gap. So the challenge that I see, and I'm probably you're seeing as well, is just people. How do we get this young generation excited to get into this? And for me, a lot of it is change. We got to change the culture a bit. I think that's the next one. Is it's not your old school. We're going to run you till you're pretty much dead, and it is a quality of life that we got to really kind of bring into this industry.
You got to look into doing corporate development, you personally, because it's you're hitting the nail on the head. It's not. There's this conception that this younger generation doesn't want to work, and certainly there's that part of it. It's been that way since the dawn of time. I hire a lot of young people. Mm-hmm. They want to work. They just want to be stimulated in a different way. 100%. And it's not, here's our exciting company culture, here's your great cubicle. It's, how do we make this awesome and fun and collaborative like a Google would be, right? People love going to work at Amazon and Google. Exactly. Why? Because there's all these amenities and all this stuff outside of work beyond the bottom line of cram as many people as you can into a room. COVID won't allow that anymore, right? Yep. You can't share 3 people to an office, and it's just miserable to work. So it's, how do you change this culture to make people excited about what they do? BP here in Denver, you should find some of their engineers to interview. Their office space is the most, I've gone in there and taken them burritos. We do some work with them.
Yeah.
And their office is gorgeous. It's
well, they love coming to work.
They love coming to work, but if you go in there, you'd see why. It's the most collaborative space. There's ping pong tables and this and that, arcade games. Not to say that that's not a productive piece of it. But after work, if you're hanging out, you're team building, you want to hang out there and hang out with people outside of your day-to-day tasks. And then the way everything's just set up and the work that they do, BPX has a big initiative to drive down, as many emissions as they can, as many greenhouse gas emissions as they can drive down. Does that mean they electrify their fleet vehicles that go out to site and put EV chargers out there, solar panels on site to charge them, et cetera, capture as many emissions as they can, convert gas instrument to instrument air, there's a million things that they do. And so these people that, even if they're, I don't want energy to be politicized. I think it's the most crazy thing that it is. But it is, and if the assumption is if you're on the left, you hate oil and gas. Well, I've worked with a lot of engineers and executives that are left-leaning that are in oil and gas, and they actually love what they do. Why? Because they're taking an industry that was, years and years ago, I wouldn't say dirty, but it certainly wasn't, the focus wasn't to capture and make it cleaner.
Yeah, it's very.
To now it's.
It was a little bit cowboy, right?
It was pretty cowboy, but it was, didn't have the technology, didn't have the way to do it.
And you just got the job done.
So like all things that evolve, it's just no different from a car to an electric car, right? And anyway, you have a lot of people now that are excited about, I'm taking these old facilities that have been venting CO2 to atmosphere, and we're going to capture that CO2, scrub it, and put it into a pipeline to sequester it. That excites people. That's a good kind of byproduct of oil and gas development. And that is, I think, how you get these younger people excited, other than, hey, let's go drill this as fast as we can, build this stuff out, and then you're fired at the end of it.
It's because, and I think for us too, we have listened. We're listening, and that pushback all of a sudden drives innovation in a new way. Like, let's capture, like you were just talking about, like there's so much technology and innovation that come from that pushback to, okay, yes, we can be better, and we're working towards that, right? So it's that's a big one I see, is just getting this younger generation excited, even through what we're doing with Social Octane. Is like, how do we communicate to them? How is this new industry gonna get people in it, man? Because and you got to start showcasing how great it is, from how much we have fun with each other, what the culture is, the technology. I mean, there's some of the smartest people I've ever met in this industry. Yeah, same. And so it's, it really is. But until you get into it, it's hard to understand that, we used to do these events and people were like, man, you guys do this all the time? It's like, yeah. It's like, but you guys, I got a young kid. Are you hiring? I'm like, man, it's always hiring. There's so much opportunity right now. in particular, we need people.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Hit the nail on the head. I would just, anybody that's out there listening, there's the corporate side, right? And then there's the entrepreneurial side, and kind of going back to it. You want to be invigorated and all that. I think a lot of corporations are kind of steering towards letting people be a little, give them a little more freedom and autonomy. Entrepreneurial, I'm an entrepreneur by blood, as are you. And I mean, that's where
well, what other industry can you come in and not know a thing, and
people help lift you up and teach you
the
everything.
sky's the limit. I mean, really,
I've had friends start,
crazy.
pipe sell. They sell pipe. Other engineering companies. I've had people, buy working interest in oil wells and go fix those things up and improve the output of those. One of my best friends, Luke Coates, I'm going to give him a little shout out. I mean, through all of the regulatory stuff that we went through with Energy Strong, his mind worked towards, okay, this is the way the world's going to be. So he went out there and created a whole new technology that does optical gas imaging. So there was FLIR, right? Where you could point the camera and look. His is like light years beyond that, to where it's on mass mounted system, and then this thing looks. It can tell whether you're wearing your hard hat or not. It gives you license plate info. It's all AI, right? Driven. And if there's a leak, if there's a plume, it's not depending on little sniffers or something. It shows that plume, what it is, how big it is, and then a lot of times it can be integrated into the facility to automate a shutdown. So there's really, I mean, the savings are just unbelievable. And so that, I just want to kind of end with that. Anybody listening, stand up for yourself, be innovative. If you see a better way to do something, it's the only reason I started Summit. I felt I'm a business guy. I think I can do an engineering company bigger, and a lot of people thought so. And I think we did things a little different. We market different, and we push out a little bit different product.
Totally.
I'm really proud of that.
And I think the beauty of the evolution and the passing of the torch is we're just in the just beginning stages of this kind of new wave of people in this industry, the culture kind of shifting, technologies, and you're linked to everything else. You're starting to see the Amazons come in and the Microsofts, and they understand that this is not going away.
Now, if you look at the EIA, the Energy Information Administration, their own forecast shows oil and gas demand to go up through 2050. Nobody really talks about that. It shows a fossil fuel line. It shows fossil fuels tapering off a little bit with coal being in there. That's coal use going away, but actual natural gas and oil, that demand goes up for the next 35 years minimum. That's minimum.
It's like the same probably people were predicting at one point that it'd be done by now.
Yeah.
And so those numbers could be skewed even more, because what they predicted before
is scaled.
Was not even close to what it is now.
No, they've got kind of this spaghetti model like you'd see in a hurricane of here's the potential paths. Even a worst case scenario, it's a very, very slow decline for the next 30 years. You still got to go fix these things up and keep drilling to keep your production numbers up. And so, I mean, anybody that's thinking about getting into the industry or worried about the industry, find your passion, find a place to plant a flag and work hard. And
that's the thing. If you got a good head on your shoulder, a good attitude,
a good network.
A good network. 100%. And I think the future of it is just going to be better at connecting every kind of energy source that's available, because each area has different needs for energy or have access to what they could do. Some might have more sun or wind or whatever it may be, but it's like linking all those into one ecosystem. But it's heavily driven by oil and gas to produce these products, but to provide.
You need to tell that story. All energy is good energy. It just takes a lot of oil and gas to produce every other energy.
The best energy is human energy.
Amen.
But no, I appreciate you coming out. Like I said, big fan of you and your journey, and the whole Energy Strong. I know we kind of started up with Oil Connect through that time, and it just sparked some fire in me, and that's what kind of kicked off what we're doing now. A lot of great parallels. I just glad to call you a friend and just a mentor in some sense. So appreciate it.
Thanks, Mark.
And we'll see where this bad boy goes.
Great. Thanks for having me down.
Yes, thanks.
Yeah.